Power up. Welcome to Energypreneurs, where I bring to you the exciting new opportunities in solar power, battery, and electric cars. I'm your host, Sohel Hasni. I have been tracking and analyzing these technologies on LinkedIn and Twitter for more than 10 years. Now we meet on podcast. Guy, I'm very excited to have you here. I think we met almost 10 years back when you were about to start, and today you are possibly one of the uh, largest startup on the electric vehicle field, no? Three-wheelers. So
We met about 5 years ago at your office in Manila.
only 5 years?
Yeah, only 5 years ago.
Oh my God.
So I remember that day as well.
2015. Oh my God. I thought we left around 2011 or 2012 when we were doing the e-trike.
No, 2014 or 15 was when we met. So at that point of time, we were just starting out with electric vehicles. Prior to that, we were in CNG and petrol three-wheelers. So we came to know about ADB e-trike project, and we were participating in that through another Japanese company. And that's how I came to know about you and the work that you are doing. And I was actually surprised that you could pull it off in the government uh, by bringing about so many different players from the government and getting a project of that scale, getting funding for such a big scale project at such an early stage was something which gave us inspiration, as well as it showed the direction in which things would move probably in 5 to 10 years time. So at that point of time, it was unclear whether the market would move towards the lead acid battery, low speed electric three wheelers with lead acid batteries, or high speed, high performance electric vehicles powered by lithium ion batteries. So we were one of the early players who were betting in terms of lithium ion batteries and the potential of lithium ion batteries. Mostly because my my brother used to work for a company in the US, and once he came back, he saw the potential that going forward the prices would fall down, and your project was a validation that that would happen in the next 5 to 10 years. So so that was the first meeting when we met. So you wanted to meet some other bigger player from Indian market, but unfortunately, it was me at that point of time.
So fantastic. But now you are quite big. You are exporting into multiple countries. I saw the picture that you are supplying to IKEA, no? So where
Sure,
are you today?
sure. So that I keep telling you, I'll tell you when I meet you in person, what was the inspiration. So you told me, so it gave a kick up my ass. So basically, what you told was you need someone who could project this in a way so that they take it seriously. And at that point of time, we were not big enough. And so that gave a spark, saying that you can do a lot of good work, but at the end of the day, you basically have to show people how it is different, and what is different in the product you are developing compared to multiple other products that are in the market. So we went about with a practical way, where we started pitching the idea of swapping stations. So this was 2015, where nobody thought swapping stations would be possible, not just in India, but in many places. And there were instances where Tesla had started swapping stations and had to shut them down. So, but we were confident that for the three-wheeler segment, which is mostly catering to last mile deliveries in most of the developing countries, we were confident that swapping stations were the way forward. And we started talking about swapping stations as a way forward for the three-wheeler segment after I met you. And initially, there was actually no response from the government, so they were fixated that it will be the cars that will move, that will take the electric vehicle revolution forward. But it took about until 2017, 2018 for people to realize that swapping stations were the way forward. If you remember, we both did a blog in 2017 regarding the same. So that was one of the key factor which most of the governments have seen, and based on your experience with Asian Development Bank as well. So people were able to realize that in the three-wheeler segment, so swapping stations might make sense for countries like India or Bangladesh or various developing countries around the world. So now, if you look at the policy that the Indian government has come up with, three-wheelers is probably in the center of the entire electric vehicle ecosystem, and swapping stations are also the best bet that the government sees in terms of adoption of electric three-wheelers on a massive scale.
So you just said three-wheelers is the center of the government's EV strategy. Can you expand a bit more on that? That's quite fascinating to hear.
So you would be happy to be in India right now. So I remember how hard it was for you to push the agenda of three-wheelers when you were doing the e-trike project. So that is what this was in 2015 when people were mostly looking at Tesla
No, that
as
was 2012 when the
yeah,
ADB project
2012.
was. Yeah.
2012. So I know only from 2014 because I started interacting with you at that point of time. So, so at that point of time, when you got $500 million funding for such a project, there might have been a lot of eyebrows that were raised if that project would require so much of funding and all. But right now, probably if you are in India, you would have been vindicated by the decision that you believed in at that point of time. So, what people have seen is adoption of electric vehicles will happen only when they are economical. So, people in developing countries, people who purchase a Tesla are extremely rich and well off. So, doesn't matter if a Tesla is $35,000 or $50,000 because they have decided to buy a Tesla. But when it comes to mass transportation, in which three-wheeler is one product. So in that segment, it only makes sense for people to switch to electric vehicles. If it makes economic sense. So if it just makes environmental sense, I don't think many people will be able to switch. So right now we are at a point where the price of the price of owning and operating an electric three-wheeler is much more cheaper compared to a petrol or diesel powered vehicle. And post COVID, what we have seen is because most of the businesses are shut and government has seen loss of revenue in terms of taxes. So they have increased the taxes on petrol and diesel. So that has become one of the main forms of revenue to the government. What that has done is it has pushed the price of petrol or diesel beyond a point where electric vehicles are a clear choice. It is not even a marginal difference. It is now a massive difference of savings that people observe by owning and operating an electric vehicle compared to a petrol or diesel powered vehicle. So that is the change that we have seen. And India being one of the largest manufacturers of three-wheelers in the world, uh, there are various components that go into an electric three-wheeler that to some extent has been indigenized right now. So we produce our own motors, we produce our own gearboxes. Right now we produce our own battery packs as well. The only thing missing right now is probably the cells. I think the government is working hard towards setting up a cell manufacturing unit in the country to see if they can become self-sufficient. Um, so unlike a market like Manila or Philippines, where they are dependent on import of components and uh, other raw material which is required to produce a three-wheeler, and because of which the cost of the vehicle increases. In India, there is already an ecosystem of component manufacturers, vendors for various electronic and electrical components, and they can adapt to electric vehicles much more quickly compared to various other countries where the manufacturing ecosystem is missing. So, uh, and three-wheelers are a perfect fit in terms of cost dynamics. If you look at a two-wheeler or a four-wheeler, the cost of owning an electric two-wheeler compared to owning a petrol two-wheeler is not, the difference is not very high. It's just marginal. And the same is the case the same is the case for a car as well. But when it comes to three-wheeler, it is at a sweet spot where it makes economic sense. So that is what government has realized at this point of time. So instead of giving a lot of subsidies to rich people who want to buy cars, the government is looking at building infrastructure that can support three-wheeler adoption on a massive scale. In a country like India, about 45 million rides happen on a three-wheeler on a daily basis. So that's a huge number of rides which happen, and a lot of pollution is attributed to three-wheelers. So this is a segment that they are currently keen on electrifying. And if you look at the plan that the government has, they don't plan to register any new petrol or diesel vehicles from 2025. So three-wheeler is the first segment. They are extremely aggressive and bullish about being electric. And since we have been in this segment and have been an early entrant in this segment, we have been able to decide policy at various state government as well as national governments, uh, and able to include swapping stations as one of the key components for adoption of electric vehicles, electric three-wheelers specifically.
Very excited to hear, because e-trike has been one of my professional failures. Still, we started with a very high 100,000 ambition.
I wouldn't agree with that part, but
No, but that's what many perceive. I sometimes, yeah, that remains that sort of, yeah, something I started and failed miserably. But anyway, it stopped after 3,000. But it's nice to see still a few e-trikes running around. So,
I would say that was the spark which was required, because at that point of time, not many were interested in e-trikes, and we never saw that e-trikes would be a massive segment in the next 5 to 6 years. So what we are seeing now probably has to some extent is attributable to a large project being undertaken in Philippines. Uh, so again, when we started off, we thought our vehicle was extremely expensive at $9,000 at that point of time, because we were importing most of the battery packs and some other electronic components at that point of time. So what was required was the price had to come down to almost all 4,000 to 4,500 USD for people to adopt electric three-wheelers. And in the context of Philippines, to get to that price point was extremely difficult, because there was no local manufacturing available, and the components or vendor base was not available at that point of time. But after meeting you, we realized that these other components which are required for supporting manufacturing of electric three-wheelers were present in India. And we had to show them that this particular field has a large potential going forward, and that is how we were able to rope in some of the vendors that we have developed over a period of time. So they have been able to provide components at a price point which makes sense for people to adopt electric vehicles. So in that context, I wouldn't see that as a failure. So uh, it is uh, it is one project which actually gave us the direction in which we had to move. So, and again, if you look at 2015, none of the Indian manufacturers were very keen on three-wheelers. So they were talking about bikes, they were talking about four-wheelers. We had to literally catch hold of their ear and then pull them down and show them that three-wheelers are the way forward. So one of our first customers was a company called Big Basket, which is the largest grocery chain in India. So when we first went to them, their first reaction was, "We want a four-wheeler." So they didn't know why or if it is the right fit for them, but they actually wanted a four-wheeler because they were used to a four-wheeler vehicle, a diesel-powered vehicle that they were using prior to this. So they actually bought a few vehicles from Mahindra, four-wheelers, which were extremely expensive. Each one was priced at around 10,000, 10 lakh rupees. 10 lakh rupees is almost all how much? $20,000 or so. So at that price point, it really doesn't make sense for someone to adapt electric four-wheelers, because you are able to get a normal four-wheeler about 4.5 lakh rupees. So it didn't make economic sense for them to switch. So once we entered that segment, even though Mahindra is a large manufacturer, they weren't able to sell a single four-wheeler after we entered that segment. So that is when they had to think in terms of three-wheeler, and that is how their direction moved away from the large four-wheelers uh, towards the three-wheeler market. And if you look at Mahindra right now, their main focus area seems to be electric three-wheeler.
Yes, yes, I saw they have the something called a trio, right? Mahindra
Yeah,
has.
they have a trio, and they have again specifically come into Trio Zor, which is targeting the cargo segment. So they have just
Okay.
launched that.
Oh, that's good. No, and I'm happy that if, as a developmental professional, so it's good to see if our project somehow helped others beyond what we are trying to do. That's
Yeah,
good.
definitely. I think the problem is for the people who are too early, or people who have a vision of 5 to 10 years down the line, it's always difficult to convince others that this will be the future 5 to 10 years down the line. And usually people look at small failures and then try to make a big fuss about it. And when it is involved in the government space, for everyone, for every one person who is trying to work, there will be 10 people who are your competitors in your in your organization who will try to pull you down.
Yeah, no, I mean, I had a one understanding, which I also still believe exactly as you said. Philippines did not have any infrastructure, so and the only way we could do it by doing a very large project. It's almost like a vaccine industry does, gives you, yeah, advanced market commitment that if you come, we will buy 100,000, and that way my vision or interest at that time to set up Philippines as an electric vehicle hub in the Southeast Asia. And this is the vision that was shared by President at that time, the energy minister at that time. So we went in that direction. But again, as you said, doing something new comes with own challenges. I underestimated a lot of vested interest groups. So it's okay. I mean, we learn in the process. But anyway, good that you are going ahead and extremely successful.
I'm lucky to be in private sector.
Yeah, yeah. The private sector, of course, we try to make things with other people's money. That's always difficult, especially working in the government. But of course, we objective is not to win or personal gain, so that creates a societal value. Now, I want to be specific on one thing that you mentioned, that three wheelers right now in a sweet spot. Can you maybe take me through what's a typical daily kilometer for a three wheeler, and how much it costs if it's a gasoline car or petrol car, and how much it costs in electricity and the cent per kilowatt hour, just to get a perspective of operational cost?
Sure. So if you look at the total cost of ownership of a petrol three-wheeler versus an electric three-wheeler, petrol three-wheeler comes to about 4.5 rupees per kilometer, with a
Mhm.
lifespan of about 7 to 8 years. And when you look at electric three-wheeler, it comes to about 2.5 rupees per kilometer. So there is a saving of almost all 2 rupees per kilometer when you look at the TCO, total cost of ownership. But
So
when you look at,
4.5 kilometer is about 5 cents, right?
yes, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So it almost become 5 cents becomes less close to 2 cents a kilometer if you go electric.
Yes. So almost all half the, if you look at the TCO, it almost all comes to about half. And depending on the traffic conditions, it actually comes to half also.
And how many kilometers does a typical three wheeler do in a day?
On an average, it varies from city to city, but on an average, these guys travel about 90 to 95 kilometers on a daily basis.
90 to 95 kilometers.
Yes.
Okay, so in doing that, you save about say equivalent of $2 a day
Yes.
straight way.
Yes.
So you save about say $700-800 a day. So the payback period is straight way 4 or 5 years. No, no, not. I mean the difference is, yeah,
Yeah.
difference may be paid in 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you look at the difference between petrol and electric three-wheeler, the upfront cost of electric three-wheelers is more by about $1,000, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
So you save on a per kilometer basis almost all around uh, 2.5 cents or so. So 2.5 cents multiplied by average it out to 100 kilometers a day. So that comes to about $2.5. Right?
Yeah. So it's about $1,000 a year you
Yeah.
save.
Yeah. So within the first year, you recover the additional amount you basically put upfront.
Okay,
So after
that's
that,
that's
yeah.
good.
So after that, it's a savings for a saving of about $1,000 on a yearly basis for 6 to 7 years. So there will be a battery replacement that would be required in between. But if you adapt swapping stations, then you don't have to worry about the initial cost of the vehicle also. So if swapping stations are present uh, in a convenient way for people to adapt, then the initial cost of vehicle also will be lower than that of petrol or diesel powered vehicle. For example, the cost of a passenger three-wheeler would come to about 2 lakh rupees. 2 lakh rupees is around 2,900 USD or so. So without the battery pack, if the driver doesn't own the battery pack and swapping station setup is available, then the cost of owning an owning a electric three-wheeler would come to about 1.7 lakh rupees or so, which is almost all about 30,000 lower than that of petrol or diesel powered vehicle. And when you look at the operational expense, so for example, a petrol powered vehicle would spend about 3 rupees per kilometer on operational expenses. But if swapping stations were available and if you look at the unit economics of swapping stations, then for a 2.5, 2.5 rupee per kilometer also, you would be able to offer swapping stations in a profitable way, on a scalable way as well. So because the price of batteries has come down to such an extent, and the life of the batteries have also increased compared to when you are trying to do the project in Philippines. So we are at a price point where if you assume that there are enough number of swapping stations available, like your petrol or fuel stations, then the upfront cost of the vehicle will be lower than that of petrol or diesel powered vehicle, and the operational cost of the vehicle will also be lower than that of petrol or diesel powered vehicle. As of today, we don't have to wait till 2025 for the three-wheeler segment at least.
Okay, yeah, because the numbers have changed. Right now, you possibly are paying for a battery less than $300 a kilowatt hour, right?
We are at $200 a kilowatt hour.
Yeah. So, like when I started e-trike pilot, that was $1,200 a kilowatt hour, and my forward-looking price forecast was $380 a kilowatt hour by the time we implemented, and you are half that. But I think the Philippines, the advantage was the fuel savings would have paid quite significantly, and plus also we had access to clean technology fund money, which is like a 45 years to pay 0.15% interest. So those concessional fund were trying to bridge the gap of those, but again, none of those things worked out at the end. But you made it happen because
If
it's.
only those were available to us, you have no idea what you can do now.
I hope yeah, those monies are Green Climate Fund and Clean Technology Fund monies are available. I will tag when I post this podcast with uh, Clean Technology Fund people, because they obviously have access to those funds, still trying to achieve the same climate uh, mitigation issues. Nothing has changed. I mean, climate issues have gone worse, right?
It has
So
become worse.
So are you planning to do a very large project now that you have a product? You should go for a mega few $100,000 unit project, no? Covering the region.
Based on your experience, I'm avoiding the governments, to be very frank. So we are private sector focused company where almost all our clients are last mile delivery service companies. So where it's much more easy to convince them if you show them savings over a period of time, where you do not have to deal with a lot of politics that come with getting into the convincing governments with their vested interests. Some of them, the projects taking a lot of time, and by the time they come to execution, it doesn't get executed as you had planned for, but uh, uh, there will be so many distractions that would have come in the between. So we try to avoid government contracts wherever it is possible. Initially, we have tried government contracts, but again, the experience that you basically had, we also have come to face those experience. So we have moved away completely from the government. We are currently focused on private sector clients, mostly in the last mile delivery space, because you don't have to depend on the network of swapping stations to cater to these clients. So most of these clients are expanding very quickly. Post pandemic, their business has almost doubled or tripled in some of the cases. So all these guys have warehouses which are spread throughout the city. So we set up our charging stations at their warehouses. These guys travel. Most of our clients travel. The average distance is about 60 kilometers a day. So they use our vehicles in the morning and they charge it at their warehouses during nights. So this is a segment that is growing very quickly. We currently have an order book of about 10,000 units from some of these clients. So we are now expanding to a new facility from our smaller facility previously. Previously, we used to produce about 200 to 250 units a month. So right now we are working on a plant which produces about 1,500 units a month. So we parallelly have plans to set up swapping stations. But if someone else has already done it, we also plan to partner with them and then provide our vehicles to in the passenger segment as well. Currently, bulk of our orders are coming in from the last mile delivery space, where it is proven that three-wheeler is the ideal last mile delivery vehicle, no matter whether you are in India, whether you are in Sri Lanka, whether you are in Japan, whether you are in France, UK, Portugal. So three-wheeler is one vehicle where it is very easy to maneuver compared to a four-wheeler, and it doesn't take up a lot of space on the narrow roads that we have. Narrow roads are a norm not just in India or some of the developing countries. What we have seen is they are a norm even in Japan, even in European Union, even in UK. So all these places have narrow roads, and the delivery segment is growing quickly. And our vehicle seems to fit into that segment uh, where um, uh, where a radius of 5 kilometers would be ideal for deliveries. So prior to this, probably about 5 years ago, the delivery segment used to have most of the last mile delivery companies used to have one or two large warehouses in a city, and they used to travel almost all 15 to 20 kilometers from that one particular hub and deliver stuff. What we have seen over the past 4 to 5 years is they're all switching from massive hubs to micro hubs, which are spread throughout the city. So instead of having one or two, they're moving to 15 to 20 micro hubs within a city. And each micro hub would require about 20 to 30 vehicles or so. So in that kind of environment, our vehicle seems to perform very well and seems to meet the requirements of most of the last mile delivery clients in various countries, not just in India.
Fantastic. Did you say that you have a 1,500 unit production capacity now?
No, we have a 250 unit capacity now, 250 vehicle unit capacity now. We are expanding our plant in the next 6 months to 9 months. We are getting a new plant which will have a production of about 1,500 units a month.
1,500 units a month, so 50
Yes.
a day.
Yes.
Okay, that's pretty good. Now, Can you tell a little bit for my listeners about your app? You have a fantastic app, no, that
Yeah.
guides the
So,
product.
yeah. So again, the motivation comes from the ADB app that you are planning at that point of time. The driver can see where they can find a nearest swapping station. In addition to that, they can see how much charge is left in that vehicle, and how much distance the vehicle can go. So unlike a petrol or diesel powered vehicle, electric vehicles, uh, the battery reduces significantly when you have slopes. So that is a data that we collect in the background. So based on the previous data that we already had, we use ML and to predict how much distance these vehicles can travel, to give them an accurate range so that they can plan their journey and all. In addition, when they run out of charge, we direct them to a nearest swapping station. So right now we have about 40 swapping stations in Hyderabad and about 10 swapping stations in Bangalore. So once we have 50 to 60 swapping stations in a single city, we plan to open this network out for the passenger segment, where the driver can purchase a vehicle from us without them owning the battery pack at a price point lower than that of petrol or diesel powered vehicles. And we are doing all of this with private sector help. So we are taking help of Amazon or Big Basket or Flipkart. They already have hubs which are fairly spread throughout the city. So we are taking their help through a revenue sharing mechanism where they provide electricity, they provide the place to swap the battery packs, and they provide the charging facilities, and we pay them so that it will be easier for us, as well as it will be easier for them in terms of showing that they are concerned about the society at large and not just about their operations. So this way we don't depend on running around the government discoms to get connections for our swapping stations. So that is already taken care by our clients. So we don't have to search for suitable location in various parts of the city. That is already taken care. So our approach is B2B, where we are selling our vehicles to most of these clients who are involved in the last mile delivery space. In addition to setting up the charging infrastructure, we are also planning for swapping stations at those hub locations. Once we have enough number of hubs in place, then we can easily open out this network for passenger segment as well, where individual driver can purchase the vehicle from us, and they can be rest assured that within any 3 to 5 kilometer range, they would be within the vicinity of a swapping station.
Fantastic. So you are really gung ho on all of those. You're doing extremely well. Very proud of you now. So
So
it's fantastic.
one lesson I have learned from you is do not depend on governments. So whenever government is involved, you don't know when the work will be done or when it will not be done.
Well, I mean, the government work, the benefit is, of course, public projects do create public goods. And sometimes the benefits is not captured by those who pay for it, right? So society at a large, if our project in a humble way benefited you, that's a bigger societal benefit. So that's why the government role gets importance. But at the same time, as you correctly said, private sector, you have the ability to move faster. Definitely. So how many countries you are now working in? Quite a
So we
large
are
number, no?
Yeah, so we are operational in Japan, we are operational in UK, France, Portugal, India, Sri Lanka. We are launching soon, and Uganda. So we are present in 3 continents now.
Wow, I think, yeah. So you're
So
not
hopefully,
looking at Australia as a market, or your neighboring Bangladesh or Pakistan?
Bangladesh definitely is a market. Bangladesh is a huge market. The only issue is it's very difficult to convince to start with passenger segment. So when they look at the price of the vehicle, they are usually put off the initial price of the vehicle. When you have drivers um, who are usually in the bottom of the pyramid, uh, first you would have to work on the financing mechanisms to support these drivers in terms of owning these vehicles. so that it doesn't become a burden for them at a later point of time. So that kind of awareness has to be created by various financial institutions. And when you look at financing for three-wheelers, it is mostly dominated by non-banking financial corporations, and the banks have zero commitment towards three-wheelers, and they have their reasons, because three-wheelers is one segment where the default rates are very high, and that's always a concern to the bankers whenever they finance three-wheelers. So it's a mindset that needs to change before we can introduce these vehicles in the passenger segment. Bangladesh is a huge market for passenger segment. Sri Lanka is a huge market for passenger segment. But we usually start off with the cargo segment, where what happens is you just have to convince one or two people, decision makers in those companies, to switch to these vehicles. First, to save costs for themselves. Second, to appear as though they're green. Most of them actually have that intent to convert to green, but economics also plays a huge part in their decision. So it becomes very easy for us to convince some of the decision makers in switching to electric three-wheelers for last mile delivery. Once they do that, what happens is people are able to see this vehicle run on a consistent basis, on a daily, on an hourly basis. And all the auto rickshaw drivers usually again come back to you asking, how do we purchase these vehicles and all. So then you go to the bank, then you say that there is a lot of interest from a lot of auto rickshaw drivers. The banks usually say no. That is when we actually go to the government asking their help in terms of pushing these products through promising loan guarantee mechanisms, which they already have. So, for example, India already has self-employment schemes through which they are able to disperse petrol and diesel vehicles. We try to get electric vehicles included in such schemes, and once that happens, then at least the drivers have some provision by which, if they want to purchase a three-wheeler, they can avail financing from some of the banks which are supported by the government, and then they would be able to purchase. So we can't do this on day one. It will be a 2-year process of 1.5 to 2-year process of introducing these vehicles first in the last mile delivery space, people getting accustomed to these vehicles, bankers getting accustomed to these vehicles and ready to finance these vehicles. So it has a bit of it takes a bit of time for convincing various people who are involved in the ecosystem to make this a success in the passenger segment. But it's much more easier to get into the last mile delivery space. That's why we start there. But our end goal is to get into the passenger segment as well.
Yeah, I mean, the passenger segment is huge, as you said, the millions of.
Yeah.
I mean,
so that's why. Even though you have been very vocal about passenger segment and government support, I always request you to think in terms of private sector last mile delivery. We start there, we use that as a springboard, and then we look at other segments, passenger being the highest priority.
Yeah, I mean, you're a private citizen, you have a lot of freedom. We are a international public service, so we have to stick to certain things, and we don't want to crowd out private sector as well. No, this is fantastic to hear all those great ideas. Now, what about Philippines? Did you look at the Philippines to come back here at all?
So Philippines, we are definitely interested. We were talking to Lazada some time back, but again, COVID had come in, and then everyone went silent for a certain amount of time. Their interest again peaked about 1 to 2 months ago. But like I said, we are looking for that 1 or 2 last mile delivery service companies who are very keen in terms of saving costs as well as the environment. So that will be an entry point that we are focused on. And whenever we have Philippines, we were contacted by mostly people who are looking at the passenger segment. And don't get me wrong, but passenger segment would not be a good place to start with.
Yeah, no, no, fair enough. And Philippines, as a result of the government's project, there are quite a number of e-trikes running.
Yeah, yeah. So
So
I do not believe in the support subsidy given by the government for sustainability of any initiative. The subsidies are extremely unstable. You don't know when they will be gone. So it has to make economic sense. It has to be sustainable, not just environmentally, but it has to be also sustainable economically. For it to be self-sufficient and the wheel to run continuously without support from various other places. So once those are established, then it will be very easy for us to enter that market.
no, no, absolutely. But the issue is subsidies are needed to create market. Like
Yeah, yeah, I
Australia,
agree with you.
Spain started 65 cents a kilowatt hour feed-in tariff. Now looks ridiculous because you can get a PPA price of 2 cents or lower. But the world has changed. The product. So yeah, subsidies have a role, but yeah, it cannot be the way to sustain. It's way to inject some energy into a market, definitely. Like the Clean Technology Fund gave the Philippine project $100 million. Exactly, that's the reason.
Yes.
It's such a cheap money to create or bridge the gap of actual sustainability and price today. Now, what's
Sure.
your vision? I mean, now you have come a long way since we met. So, what's you are going to take over the world? What's the plan now?
We are looking for partners. So again, this is something that one person or one company cannot do. So it's a huge market potential. So unlike the traditional three-wheeler market, which was mostly restricted to market developing countries, I think there is potential for electric three-wheelers not just in developing countries but also various developed countries around the world,
Mhm.
especially in the cargo segment. And going forward, the cargo segment, the last mile deliveries and online shopping has been increasing at a tremendous rate in various countries. And so we are looking for various partners in various countries through which we would be able to introduce these vehicles much more quickly compared to what we would do if we were to work individually. And so prior experience in the three-wheeler business would take us a long way because they already know what would be the maintenance or service that would be required for traditional three-wheelers. So our partner in UK actually was an agent for Bajaj or Piaggio before he started distributing our vehicles. So he currently manages not just UK but also Portugal and France as well. In the Ugandan market, we started off with a company called Soko Watch, which is a B2B2C company, which is involved in last mile delivery of goods through small kirana stores or small stores. So it has been going well so far, and we also have interest from another company called Jumia, which is similar to your Amazon or Flipkart or various other last mile delivery service companies. It is, I think, the largest e-commerce company in Africa. So the demand is coming in from various players. We start off with last mile delivery service vehicles. After that, once we have enough number of swapping stations in place, we'll be opening up that market for passenger segment as well. In some countries like Sri Lanka, for example, we are talking to some of the government organizations where they are ready to provide space as well as electricity connections, because the government wants to get away from dependence on petrol or diesel, because if they are able to produce a lot of solar or wind power, they can completely switch their transport system to electric vehicles as well. And three-wheelers, if you look at the per capita three-wheelers around the world, Sri Lanka has the highest per capita three-wheelers in the world. For a population of 20 million people, they have 1 million three-wheelers on their roads. So that's about one three-wheeler for every 20 people. India has one three-wheeler for about 80 people. But when you look at the three-wheelers density in Sri Lanka, that's quite high. So the government is extremely keen in that respect, and we are partnering with one of the companies to introduce swapping stations as well as passenger vehicles in Sri Lanka, because the online e-commerce market is very small in Sri Lanka. So it depends on market to market, and it will be local people who would be much more aware about the marketing and local conditions that they have in different markets. And we take their help in propagating our products, and we are open to basically sharing this with them as well. So we are open to providing technology for setting up smaller plants across various locations, so that you can reduce the duty amount that is unnecessarily paid on the vehicle, which thereby increases the cost of the vehicle. So we are looking at ways by which we can set up local manufacturing units, encourage vendor development in those places. Because three-wheelers, again, is not a rocket science, to be very frank, but it requires a specific set of quality assurances from various vendors, not just one vendor. If there are some 300, 350 components that go into a three-wheeler, and if let us say your three-wheeler is fantastic, but your key switch is not good, then the impression from the customer would be that key switch, the impression that gets into the customer's head would be that of the key switch, not that of the entire three-wheeler. So it takes some quality assurance from vendors. The vendors have to come to a certain standard where they are able to supply components that are durable, that are comparable to the three-wheelers that are already in the market, because comparison directly goes to sturdy, rigid, durable three-wheelers that are already in the market. So you need to balance out, basically ensuring that quality of the vehicle is maintained, as well as cost of the vehicle reduced by saving on customs through local manufacturing and all. So we are looking at various options available, and partnering with various local companies in different countries. Right now, we are talking in Tanzania, we are talking in Bangladesh, we are talking to people in Indonesia, various locations, Peru, Colombia, Mexico. So hopefully in another 3-4 years, we should have our base in at least 30 to 35 countries where three-wheelers are extremely popular. And after that, we probably will look at swapping stations expansion in these countries, so that you can quickly get into the passenger segment. And so that is the vision in the next 5 years. So in the next 10 years, I have, to be very frank, I haven't thought about the next 10 years.
Fantastic. So are you partnering up with any of the solar companies for solar charging stations? Because that seems like a very natural extension, no? If you go to remote areas and other places, if you have a solar charger partner.
Yes, it definitely is. So for example, so we don't do it directly. Right now, our customers like IKEA or Big Basket or Flipkart, they have warehouses on which they have already partnered with some of the solar companies, solar rooftop companies to power their warehouses, as well as to some extent power the three-wheelers. But there is only so much of limited space available to basically do this. What probably will be possible going forward is countries like India have wheeling mechanism whereby the power can be produced at a remote location, but you can directly have a purchase agreement with that remote power producer, solar power producer, and you can pay for the transmission cost to the government, so that you are guaranteed power from a remote location. So that is something we are looking at going forward in the future, because that will significantly, again, so even at commercial price, it only comes to about 50 paise per kilometer. But if you were to directly deal with a solar company, then that will come down to about 20 paise per kilometer. So that the saving is also quite significant. But in the initial stages, we are looking at focusing on how to increase the number of three-wheelers, so that you can tap into the difference in pricing between a petrol-powered three-wheeler and and an electric powered three-wheeler. Once you have significant number of electric three-wheelers in place, then you can work at how to reduce the price of the price per unit that the electricity department is charging you, or things like that. So immediately, I don't think so. But in the next 3 to 4 years, once you get into swapping station business, it makes a lot of sense for you to directly have power purchase agreements with power producers, remote power producers, so that the cost of your services would also reduce, and you people will find it even more lucrative compared to a petrol or diesel powered vehicle.
Fantastic, very exciting. I mean, the journey that when we first met and where you are here is really very proud of you, what you have done to
Thanks a
the
lot.
world and what you're doing. So, what you want to tell a wannabe entrepreneur who wants to come into this field, right? Everybody seems to be getting into electric vehicle finally, thank God. So, what do you want to tell them?
So what we have seen, most of the entrepreneurs who have come in actually look to raise a lot of capital before they find a product market fit. So what that does is, by the time they are able to, they spend a lot on R&D. You definitely have to spend some amount of R&D, but spending a lot is not advisable. So you would have to be frugal when you are innovating stuff. See what is useful, and then do it, because they get into the spiral of how to raise the next round. That is something I have seen in most of the startups that have come up in the electric vehicle segment. So the focus has not been on how to get the product market fit correctly, but how do I raise the next round so that I can keep paying my employees. Uh, you should get to revenue extremely quickly. If you do not get to revenue stage quickly, then the focus in terms of your startup also um, goes towards the negative direction, where the thinking is how much do we spend to come out uh, with a product that is suitable for the market. And what it does also is that uh, it creates hurdles for entrepreneurs uh, who are looking to be frugal. For example, when we go for funding, the usual question everyone has is X or Y startup has spent about $50 million and do not have a product out yet. You have only spent about $4 or $5 million, and you have a product out, and you are selling these vehicles. That means it can be done by everyone else. So what they fail to understand is, so we have had prior experience building three-wheelers, not electric three-wheelers, but petrol and diesel powered vehicles. So what it does is it gives you a lot of vendor base whom you can request to tweak your products, tweak their products so that they are suitable for electric vehicles. And that kind of relationship helps in terms of product development. Instead of spending huge amounts of thousands of dollars on reinventing some of the smaller innovations that will increase the range of vehicle by 2 or 3 kilometers. We focus that effort on improving the battery packs or improving the power electronics that are required basically to get an increase in range of about 10 to 15 kilometers, instead of focusing on that improving that tire or grip to a little bit so that you increase the range by 1 or 2 kilometers. Because we are aware that going forward, that 1 or 2 kilometers, the cost you spend on improving that small component would not pay off. But when a lot of fund is available, they want to look at each and every component. They try to dissect each and every component and spend a lot of effort on getting that 1 to 2 kilometer range extension, compared to spending their time on reducing the cost of battery pack, or making the battery pack robust. That 1 or 2 kilometer addition would anyhow come in because of reduction in the price of the lithium ion batteries going forward in the next 1 year or so. So frugal innovation is required. There are various aspects. We are like we are at the tip of the iceberg. So for me to compete with large companies, if you asked me 5 years ago, can you compete with large companies in this space? My answer would have been, to be very frank, no. But when you look at their products in this specific area and see those products perform or not perform over a period of 3 to 4 years, competing with them, able to innovate much more quickly with them. So this is one particular area. Electric vehicles is one particular area where there is a lot of improvement to be made in terms of product development and business models that startups can easily compete with established players and also make their mark, and to some extent bring the established players into segment which makes sense, rather than focusing efforts on some other segments where it doesn't make sense to go electric yet. So if they spend that same amount of time on the electric three-wheelers market, for example, they are now able to make much more significant ground. So we can easily compete with established players in this segment, especially the automobile established players. They take a lot of time to innovate. New companies will be much more faster, but you just have to be frugal instead of spending a lot of time, effort, and money on innovations that don't add so much value to your end product in the electric vehicle segment.
Thank you. That's a very good insight. Just one other thing I wanted to ask. When we are doing the e-trike project in the Philippines, one crazy idea among many I had was to put little pollution sensor on each of the tricycles, so CO2 monitor and a pollution and ppm, so that along with the app, at the end of the day, you will very easily see a pollution contour, if you like, how the ppm is behaving. That would have been a very good public information. People will see that a particular part of the city, and I did not know what to do with the data, but I thought that would have a very interesting ramification, not only in property price, but in terms of at least talking points and local community doing something about it. So are you planning to do anything along those lines, or too early, or not needed?
No, I think it would be required. So you can, like you rightly pointed out, pollution sensor network would be interesting to most of the governments, actually. So we will, now that you have given the idea, we'll try to definitely implement that with the vehicles that we have at our disposal. So it might take some time for us to do it for the old vehicles, but for the new vehicles, the sensor prices are reasonable at this point of time. Yeah, at this point of time, to build a pollution sensor network on a real-time basis, that will give the governments a map on the amount of pollution available at a particular point and all. So again, thanks for the idea. We'll try to incorporate that.
Fantastic. Because today with the IoT, it's so easy to do. 10 years ago, it was quite difficult and expensive. Now it's a few dollars here and there.
Yes. So it's definitely possible. I don't think this is for the future. It can be done now.
Okay, fantastic. Very happy if you can pick that up. So thank you, Gayam. Really learned a lot. I really appreciate for your time.
Same here from you, Sohail. Thank you. Always a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. If I can be of any help anytime, you know where I am. And thank you once again.
Thanks a lot, Sohail.
Thank you for joining us this week. If you haven't done so yet, subscribe to our show. Also, leave your comments and review if you enjoyed today's episode. Follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter at @shasni for updates. That's SHASNIE. Once again, this has been Energypreneurs, connecting you to the innovative opportunities in solar power, batteries, and electric vehicles. Stay tuned.